Contrary to popular belief, your protagonist doesn't have to be likable. They have to be interesting. And interesting means that we, the audience, that we care what happens to them. If you're gonna take the time to tell a story, then tell a story that matters. As soon as anyone finds out that you write screenplays, almost inevitably they say something like, "I've got a great idea for a movie," as if you don't have enough ideas already. But coming up with an idea isn't the problem. There's a host of ways to do that, and lots of random and honestly unproductive lists that you can find online about how to come up with a story idea. But the issue isn't about creating any idea. The issue is about having a great idea. One that not only will get your script read, but one that gives it an actual shot to get sold or to get you some attention. And for an idea to be great, it needs 3 solid things: an interesting protagonist in extraordinary circumstances with life-impacting stakes. And on the surface, those 3 things sound pretty simple and straightforward, but it is screenwriting and very few things are simple and straightforward. Before I start pulling those apart though, I need your help. I want and covet your feedback. And for the month of January, I've set aside several hours each week to talk to you, hopefully 50 of you, at least that's my goal, in what I'm calling 30 Minutes with Jake. This isn't time for script consulting. I'm not trying to sell you anything in our 30 minutes. I simply need and want your input and feedback. I'm literally going to ask you a few questions about your screenwriting journey. What are some helps you need with screenwriting right now? How are you doing in the screenwriting process? What are some screenwriting goals you have over the next year? As time allows, of course, if you have questions for me, fire away, but I'm going to be sticking to the 30 minutes per call to honor your time and the time of others who are willing to spend 30 minutes of your time, their time, on the phone with me, just helping me know where you're at right now in your screenwriting journey. I simply want to be of help to you, and I could be of better help with some focused feedback from you. So in the description is a link for 30 Minutes with Jake. Click on that, schedule a time that works for your schedule on Zoom, and I look forward to chatting with you. There's also a few other links below that might be of interest to you, including a Patreon link if you'd like to further support me and gain access to all of my archive videos and some other fun stuff for patrons. And please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, bell, all of that along the way. I really do appreciate any interaction because those interactions, they do help others find this channel. So I really do thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it. All right, back to great ideas needing 3 things: an interesting protagonist in extraordinary circumstances with life-impacting stakes. Now let's pull those apart a bit because I don't want you just having good ideas for screen stories. I want you having great ones. So when I say an interesting protagonist, please hear what I'm not saying. I am not saying a likable protagonist. Contrary to popular belief, your protagonist doesn't have to be likable. They have to be interesting. And interesting means that we, the audience, that we care what happens to them. That caring might be that we want them to get the job or the promotion or to get together with the person that we know they're meant to be with. But it might also mean that they sacrifice themselves for someone or something else, or that they are arrested and put in jail and punished because that's what they deserve. And whether or not your story fulfills on these promises, because the criminal may in fact escape, your protagonist has to be interesting enough for us, the audience, to care what happens to them. And you can make characters interesting in a couple of ways. First, they're interesting because of their own personal history. Perhaps something happened in their past that has shaped them significantly. Perhaps something they participated in or something they found themselves in has shaped them or given them unique knowledge or insight, or ghosts that haunt them, either metaphorically or literally. Perhaps their family history has just shaped them in some specific way, maybe even without them knowing. And anything in the past that feels out of the ordinary for most of us who are watching will cause us to be interested in the character. Why? Because we as people like to make sense of the world around us. And if anything feels different or something other than our normal experience, we wrestle to make sense of it, which makes us interested in the character dealing with those things. And this is especially true if we expect a past event in a character's life to shape a character one way, but instead the character behaves opposite of what we might expect. That's interesting. Second, protagonists are interesting because of an inherent skill or ability that they have. I mean, let's admit it. We all secretly want to be super good at something. But what happens when we actually meet characters in stories who are super good at something? Well, we're interested in them because we automatically want to be like them. And what makes us more interested in them is if the characters themselves don't even recognize their unique ability, but someone else in their orbit does. Now, another way to think about this is every great idea has a protagonist who is a superhero of some kind. Now, they might literally be a superhero, but they could just as easily be a super CEO or a super mom or a super scientist or a super janitor, or they could be very not super. And we wonder how in the world they even function on a daily basis, only for that character to learn or realize the skill that they really are super at. And we watch them become this other person. Story with those kinds of characters are always great stories. Third, the protagonist is interesting because of their actual job or position. I mean, let's admit it, most of us watch movies to escape our normal life or just to be entertained.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
And this is why there aren't too many movies about people just doing ordinary jobs. In great ideas, protagonists have unique jobs, or at least jobs that most of us will never have the opportunity or desire or skill level to do. So jobs like an elite soldier or a rock star or an assassin or treasure hunters, superheroes, actual superheroes, or even accountants. And last, protagonists are interesting because of what they are hiding or lying about. Nothing creates immediate interest by an audience in a character more than to witness that character lying about something. As soon as a character lies and we know that they're lying, we are interested and engaged. But here's the secret sauce. It's not just when you include one of these four. It's when you include combinations of them. Or did you just think that you liked the character of Walter White because he was a criminal? Oh no. He's got cancer and no way to take care of his family. He's a genius chemist. He's stuck teaching high school science to students who couldn't give a rip. And he's lying to his family and practically everyone in his life about all of it. Now, that doesn't mean that you should go out and try to make sure your protagonist has all four of these things, but you probably need more than one, because a protagonist who is just a manager for a rock star, even though that's a unique job, that's just not enough. I mean, maybe they're a manager by day and a secret agent by night. I mean, that's more interesting. This is also actually why in a lot of movies, the antagonist has some personal connection to the protagonist. It adds another dimension to the story and creates a more interesting character. But an interesting protagonist isn't enough to have a great idea for a story. That character also has to be put into some extraordinary circumstances. One question you always have to wrestle with when telling any story about an interesting character is, why now? This character is interesting. As a result, we could just look at a bunch of different sections of their life and create an entertaining story. But why this moment? Why now? If you're writing a movie, it can't be just any moment from your protagonist's life. Yes, we're going to see some of their status quo life at the beginning of the movie. What is their normal life like? But something must happen that kicks them out of their status quo life and into some extraordinary circumstances. The Emperor's son kills his father to take his place, and Maximus is now public enemy number one. An astronaut is believed to be dead and left on Mars by himself, and no one even knows he's alive.
Surprise.
A waitress is thrust into the limelight after she is discovered by an alcoholic musician. The circumstances the protagonist finds himself in have to be extraordinary. They have to be something that, before they happen, if we ask the protagonist, they would probably say that it's highly unlikely, if not impossible, for that thing to happen. I mean, Maximus never thought he would be tapped to lead Rome. Not in his wildest dreams. And he definitely didn't think that Commodus is going to kill his own father and that Maximus himself would end up being a slave. Mark Watney never thought beyond his wildest dreams that he would be stranded by himself on Mars and left for dead. And he definitely never imagined he'd be the only living thing on an entire planet.
God! 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 God!
And Allie always wanted to be a singer, but she never imagined she'd be discovered by a current star. And she definitely never imagined falling in love with him and performing to sold-out crowds. The circumstances the protagonist ends up in have to be extraordinary. And the question the audience should usually have is, when they see this happen, they see your interesting character and they see these extraordinary circumstances, the question they're going to have is, how is this going to work? Because there is no way I can tell that this is going to work. There's no way a gladiator slave defeats the Emperor of Rome. There's no way an astronaut survives on his own for a whole year on Mars. There's no way a waitress can suddenly be successful as a music star and not break under the strain. So if the audience is looking at the circumstances and the protagonist with there's no way that protagonist can deal with that, okay, now you have some extraordinary circumstances. And maybe for you personally, you might be looking at the craft of screenwriting in the same way. I mean, you have a deep interest to get better, and you might even have some skill, but you're thinking, there's no way I will ever get there. There's no way I will ever transform myself and master the process and the skills to write marketable screenplays. But that's not true. You can get there. It takes a lot of work. And I'm not gonna lie to you about that. It's work. And just having a great idea isn't enough. That's the start of the process. But to get good at screenwriting, you've got to transform yourself into a master storyteller. So if you've got a couple of screenplays under your belt and you're ready to stop playing at the craft and become a master storyteller, you should consider applying for the Screenplay Navigator. Links are below if you want more information and want to be part of that community where you will learn to master the process and the skills to write marketable screenplays so that you can tell effective stories that matter to a world who desperately needs to hear the stories that only you can tell. You want to transform yourself into a master storyteller? Check out the Screenplay Navigator, schedule a free call, and let's chat. In that program, one of the things you'll do is exercise the muscle of generating story ideas, and we will help you further discern between the good ones and the great ones. But now you've got an interesting protagonist, you've got some extraordinary circumstances, but you still have to go one step further. The stakes of the story have to be life-impacting stakes. Stakes that will dramatically alter the direction or threaten the very existence of the protagonist or of someone they care about. So Maximus is tasked with returning Rome to its former glory. But to do that, he's going to have to overthrow the emperor and not die in the gladiator ring in the process. Because if he fails, not only will he die, but so also will many others, including other people that he cares about. If Mark Watney can't get things together, he's gonna die. I mean, the stakes are literally whether he will live or die. His life is at stake. If Allie can't learn to navigate fame, she'll lose everything and probably never have a chance to get it again. And she's hoping to save her alcoholic husband in the process. Lives and the trajectories of lives must be at stake. There's no sugarcoating. There's none of the, well, if it doesn't work out, that's no big deal kind of stuff. If the stakes don't matter, why tell the story? And if you want a great idea for a story, the stakes have to be life-altering. Some of you right now are writing a story where if your protagonist doesn't get what they're after, their life will just return to how their life was before. Their failure won't really cost them anything, and you can't do that. It has to cost them something. It doesn't mean they could die in the process. It doesn't have to mean that. It might, but it doesn't have to. It does mean that they will be worse off later than they are right now. It does mean that their life will go in a direction that they don't want it to go. It does mean it will be painful, emotionally, physically, mentally, all of it, if they don't get what they're after. The stakes must be life impacting. It will be worse, far worse, if the protagonist fails. It would probably for sure be great if the protagonist succeeds. If your protagonist is a villain, it'll be great for them if they succeed, and it's going to be horrible for everybody else. But there are life impacting stakes. And if you don't have life impacting stakes, your story idea might only be a good idea, but it will never be a great one. And great ideas have all three of these elements: an interesting protagonist in extraordinary circumstances with life-impacting stakes. And if you want some more help with evaluating the potential idea of your story, watch this video. Don't forget about 30 Minutes with Jake. A link is below for that. And when you go to tell a story, make sure it's a great idea and tell a story that matters. See you later.